this session update, I'm Shannon Lurkey. Governor Tim Walz and Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan addressed the media about concerns expressed, in particular by the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, that the Omnibus Judiciary and Public Safety Finance and Policy Budget Bill does not sufficiently address public safety reforms. Here's that media event.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Before we get started, as we're nearing the end, one way or another, I want to give a thank you to the folks that you maybe don't see around here a lot. The revisers, the folks who are reading and updating the bills, the nonpartisan staff, both fiscal staff and policy staff. Those folks are always available as these conversations go late into the night on these final days. It's pulling those folks in to help clarify, to make sure that literally all the T's are crossed, the I's are dotted, and that the compromises that were reached are truly in both the spirit and truly the letter of that. So thank you for those folks. We're close here. We know we've got just a few things hanging out. There's a lot in these this year's budget bills and policy bills to be proud of. Coming out of COVID and the COVID recovery budget, we focused heavily on especially making sure our children came through this right, making sure there are investments in education and health and human services. And you've heard both Democrats and Republicans talk about those two particular bills in general as being maybe some of the best in decades, and if not with the HHS bill, maybe one of the best ever. Smart, policy-oriented, focused, and fiscally responsible, and we're going to make sure we have the rainy day funds there. Data coming out this week, Minnesota ranked 8th for GDP growth in the nation. We're 3rd for our labor participation rates, and I believe we're now 10th or 11th on unemployment rates, and climbing or decreasing in the right direction. With that being said, those investments from transportation to other areas that we care about are getting done. We know that the sticking point, or the point where we're still working on, is public safety, and that should not be surprising. The last 13 months since that late May day in 2020, when George Floyd was murdered, to the upheavals across this country and across the world around the ideas of how do we both prevent violence and making sure there's accountability in those who are chosen and sworn to do that. This is especially acute in communities that feel this, and I know that the members of the Posse Caucus feel this very personally for many of them, and their work to try and make sure that we have good, solid accountability. Just to be clear, this is not a choice between being pro-police, anti-police, pro-safety, anti-safety. These are about making sure that people are respected and protected in their own communities, and that the resources and the policies are there to make a difference. Focusing on violence prevention, focusing on recovery for folks, focusing on making sure that people know that there's transparency in the system that they count on to make happen. So what the Lieutenant Governor and I and our administration did today, some of this is not going to get done. And there's, for whatever reason, in this moment where the world is watching us and the opportunity to get policies that are supported from activists to communities to police, there's no reason we shouldn't have been able to get a little more done. But that's the nature of the legislative process. But that doesn't mean there aren't things that we can do. And we're taking moves at the Post Board to make sure that the accountability measures are there. We have 7 new members of the Post Board that are committed to getting this right, working with police and working with community. We're making some of the Recovery Act dollars from the ARPA funding available for community prevention, that the community understands what they need to get to make sure not only we're having accountability in policing, but we're making sure that a little girl dancing on a trampoline is not inadvertently shot, and talking about those things. And then we're going to set the model in the state government. We've requested, and the legislature has, we're grateful for, going to fund body cameras for the State Patrol and the DNR for all of DPS. And we'll set the body camera footage on that to make sure that families are seeing those in a timely manner in the first couple of days, and that the public gets them in a way that makes sense. Those are things that people are asking for. Those build trust. They build trust in our police. They build trust in our systems. They build trust amongst communities, and they provide what's needed in some cases, closure, at least understanding for families. So those are things that we're prepared to take today that will start to move this, and know that there's more work to be done. So I'm incredibly hopeful that we're on the very final stages here. Some of you were right when you predicted that this would go down to the very end. Some of the legislators were I think they told us that there's no way this doesn't go to the 30th, so they successfully had a self-fulfilling prophecy. But we are going to get it done. And Lieutenant Governor?
We are here as we are scooching towards the finish line, and I think just building on what the governor said, as we are listening to folks from the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus and listening to community as folks have concerns that the public safety bill could go further, we are stepping up and we are investing in the community violence prevention grants. We are taking a look at the law enforcement that we oversee and are also determining what is possible at the post board. So we have more to do in Minnesota. That is very clear, and we are answering that call, and we'll keep pushing for an opportunity to reimagine what public safety looks like in this state.
Governor, Representative John Thompson said all they're getting from the governor's office is lip service and that you lack testicular fortitude to deal with this police reform issue. How do you respond to that?
Well, I respond, first of all, I know that I think for all of us to put this in context, John Thompson's best friend was Philando Castillo, who was shot in front of his child. John has a position and a point on this that I don't have that life experience of. I listen to him when he talks. I know he's frustrated. I know he wants to see things move. We're partners in this. We support this legislation. I understand what's possible and what's not possible in divided government, and I think today is a step trying to show that there's moves that we can make. We're all in this together, and when I say all of us, that's every community, that's Metro, outstate, that's Democrats and Republicans, to make sure that we have safe communities where everyone feels that way. And Representative Thompson does not feel that way in his community. He does not feel he's being heard. And so I hear that. And I hope he's seeing that we're trying to do everything that we can and will continue to.
Governor, this bill has your sign off. They want to, the folks in the Posse Caucus are demanding amendments. There's supposedly some areas where it's not complete. Does that suggest that there is perhaps room for some of these amendments to actually get through both the House and the Senate?
Well, since Lieutenant Governor and I don't vote on anything, I think it's going to be pretty dependent on where it's been all the time. What is capable of getting through both the House and what the Senate has said no to? Those three amendments we have supported from the beginning. We have asked for them. This bill was negotiated between the House and the Senate with our commissioners present to try and work with them. We have been very clear from the beginning. We supported the bulk, or if not all, of the House positions. And I've stated, and it wasn't to believe that this is over, but there's a point where when the Senate tells me no enough times, I believe them, and they are not going to do it. And the ability to be able to get something through and signed into law is incumbent on us to find that middle ground. And the Posse Caucus expressed it's not enough. I agree with them. It isn't enough, but just because I say it isn't enough is probably not going to change the mind of Senate Republicans. So what we're trying to do is trying to move some things that we have the capability through the executive branch to try and get us to go forward. I don't think any of us believed. I think that in this moment we were hopeful that there would be a change of heart around a few things, but this process tends to go pretty much as it always does, and people staked out their positions, they ground it to the end, and I believe that this bill that was negotiated between the House and the Senate, conference committees, our commissioners, was as far as we could go, and then we'll have to pick up and continue on.
Governor, can I ask you about the BCA and body camera footage? Oftentimes they are investigating police shootings that aren't involving their officers. They have body camera footage that's been taken by other agencies. Does this order authorize the BCA to release to families footage that they did not take?
No, it won't be state law that we asked for, but it will be by, and again, I want to be clear, Colonel Langer and our state patrol, they are fully supportive of getting body cameras and having a very aggressive policy on getting that out. We won't have the authority over those other agencies, but this will encompass state patrol, DNR, BCA, but not those.
Governor, given that the public safety bill includes funding for courts and prisons, what do you think that House DFL Posse Caucus should do tomorrow if they don't get their amendments? Should they vote for the bill, and should they get it into law?
Yeah, this is hard with the legislator. I obviously am from the executive branch. I would encourage them to support the legislation. It's a compromise that we've worked through together with a clear recognition that it's not enough for them. My hope is today is to show some of this movement that we are partnering with and trying to move the things that we're able to move and continue to explore other ways that we can. So I would encourage them to support this, but with a full recognition that these are independent legislators elected by their constituents, and they'll make the right decision that's right for them.
Governor, can you talk about, the thought process going into announcing these executive actions? At what point did you decide to take some of these matters into your own hands, if you will?
Yeah, and many of them you've seen, we're looking at them. The Post Board, while there are political appointees to the Post Board, is an independent body, as it should be. It meant to be, and this is what a lot of what the Posse Caucus is asking for. They're asking for civilian oversight of police agencies so that you feel like you have accountability. The Post Board, in its the way it's intended, is supposed to do that. It takes a rulemaking process. It's been moving on. So we've been working with them, and you saw that starting on April 22nd and the first meeting of the newly appointed members of the Post Board, they took action around white supremacist affiliations in police departments. They took action around model policies around First Amendment demonstrations. So we've been working on this quite some time. I think the ability to now be able to say we need to move a few of these things, especially around the body camera footage. We were waiting on that one because we thought it would get passed and it would become state law, and there would be no need to have a separate policy for working with State Patrol and that. So that's manifested itself over the last few days. The same thing is true trying to understand what the Recovery Act dollars would look like after the budget is done. We've stressed all along that the Recovery Act dollars that came were clearly meant, and the signing statement by President Biden made that it was meant to go to communities to recover from COVID and the peripheral issues caused by COVID. And we believe that some of these issues, especially as it revolves around community safety and crime, warrants doing that. So this has been evolving over the last, probably several months, but more focused on when we would take this action depending on what legislative action got done.
But to be clear, the body camera release, though, that emerged within these last few days when it was clear that wasn't going to make the final deal.
Yeah, it just seems that we can set the tone, and we need to be models on this. And I think Colonel Langer, DNR folks, that they believe that's too, and these are folks that are supportive of that. I think when you see that DPS, State Patrol being the model policy, that will have an impact, and each of these local jurisdictions can start to follow. We certainly still believe it would be best to have this in state law. We supported that, but in the absence of that, we can still make a difference.
Governor, do you have any assurances that this public safety bill, the budget bill, will get done by Wednesday? I know that the House plans to amend the bill and potentially send something different to the Senate, sort of leaving open the question of whether it passes in time or not. But what assurances do you have that we'll have a public safety bill after?
Again, not surprisingly, the legislative branch has their own agenda and their own mind, and they don't necessarily follow my timeline. But I've made it clear we owe it to Minnesotans to get this done on time. The Speaker is a master at understanding how long it takes to move things. I think she is doing a phenomenal job of making sure her members' voices are heard, they're being truly represented, and then finding a compromise. But I've made it clear that we need to do all we can to make sure this does get done. It does get done on time. Again, they'll have to vote their conscience on it, but the implications of this are pretty drastic for Minnesotans, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
So even you are unsure what's going to be the outcome of that bill before Wednesday?
Yeah, I think at this time I'm doing, again, this is, Lieutenant Governor and I were just discussing this. I am relatively accomplished. Some of you know that old joke, when you're a member of Congress, the only thing you really know how to do is count to 218, and you get very, very good at whip counting. And I'll just be candid, that's the Speaker's and the Majority Leader's responsibility, but we're watching that very closely on how that whip count goes to make sure that it's able to get done.
Do you have other executive orders in the wings in the event that something that you think is really important doesn't get done, that you would take action yourself?
Well, we're working it, and what we're asking for, there were 30 items that the House sent over of things that they want to see us explore, that what can we do and what we can't do. And we need to be very careful, obviously, to make sure those fall within the legal jurisdiction, the constitutional jurisdiction of the executive branch, and to see what those things are that can move. So we are still exploring those. That list is out there. I believe they've been making it very public on what's there, and we're doing our deep dive to see what can be done.
Governor, as a follow-up to that, one of the big things they're looking for is the pretextual stops Could you order the State Patrol to stop pulling people over for expired tabs?
No, this is one that I think we need to be really careful of. That's the place about making sure that we're aligning with state law. We're going to set the model policy around the body cameras and see if they follow footage on that. We can start to model those types of things. I'm still hopeful, in the way I understand it, that there is an amendment going to be put forward on the pretextual stop. Again, many of these things, and I know you're reporting on this, law enforcement is not opposed to these things, of being put into these positions that escalate into violent situation that could have been averted. So we'll continue to talk. I continue to listen, confer, and make sure we're building community collaboration with all these agencies, and that includes the State Patrol, to see what that looks
So
like.
just to be clear on that, you can't order that. That is one thing that could not be
State
done
law
by
needs to be the focal point, and then we operate from state law, because that's not
What are
responsible.
the implications of the state government bill having that, what might be termed a poison pill, your powers ending immediately? What are the implications of that for you in terms of the final outcome here?
Yeah. First of all, let's be clear. We're in a great position around COVID. State of Minnesota's managed us. We were just looking. We're 14th best state in terms of deaths per 100,000. Third largest of those states. Cases down. Hospitalizations dropped under 100. And so just to be clear, when the Republicans are saying the emergency's over, they've been saying that every week for 13 months, and like a brine squirrel, they found a nut. We are done with this, and that's why we said the 1st of August is that we would wrap it up, because it's basically sweeping the floors, turning off the lights, continuing to do things. With that being the case, and I think a reckless proposition to say that's not good enough, even though there are no mitigation efforts put in place, there is no impact on Minnesotans other than us continuing to receive federal funds and us having the ability to move employees to give vaccines and testing. I'm trying to figure out how to make sure that we can continue to manage COVID the way we have, and that we're trying to figure out a way if we can get those additional benefits of what would happen.
What I was getting at is you're worried that that's going to make for an even bumpier landing.
It could be, but I would have to think at this point in time, Minnesotans are not going to be very, very forgiving about this, that we've managed this thing to the end. With very little help, to be very candid, from the folks who now say that this is over. We've told them, yes, it's over, but we've given 5,678,000 shots. We've tested over 14 million people. We put in safeguards in workplaces. We've done all this work, and you have to unwind it a little bit. So for people to say, no, you need to quit tomorrow, they haven't done any of the work. And so I think Minnesotans would say, really? This thing is over. All these things come off. The eviction moratorium off-ramp is operating. All those things are there. So I would hope that calmer heads would prevail, and that August 1st is right around the corner, and we could do that. So we'll continue.
About the policing and this is a serious question. No, I'm going to ask a question here. Not to make this all about Representative Thompson, but he made a broader point and a bigger point. And he said he was hoping for funding for various things to help his community and other communities. He had proposed housing money. He had proposed community development. He had proposed. Can you speak to us about whether any of those proposals or what in these 13 bills could be in line with what he was saying his community needed?
Well, I agree with Representative Thompson that those are the things that are needed and necessary in order to ensure that our communities have opportunities and are thriving. Real investments in housing, real investments in education, and making sure that we have teachers who reflect the students who are in their classrooms, where we are teaching our young people the truth about who they are and where they come from. And you know, in this budget, we've moved a lot of those things. But I also hear that it isn't enough. And what I hear from people is that they're hurting. And I think one of the things that we have to acknowledge is the trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma that people are holding right now. So as folks are saying that this doesn't go far enough, we can hear that and we can hold it, and we can determine how we are going to move forward together. And as a former member of the People of Color and Indigenous Caucus, I understand that you are not just the representative for your own district, that when people come to your door, they are coming to your door from all across the region and all across the state and have expectations. So I want to acknowledge what they are holding to, and it is tremendous. So we can do more, we will do more, but we also need to make sure that we are acknowledging some of the wins that we've had around issues about families, children and families and poverty, education and housing, and knowing that this is like scaffolding and we have to continue to build on it. But it is a lot to hold, and I also just want to take an opportunity to acknowledge just the deep trauma that everyone in our state, and in particular Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks are facing in this moment. And for elected leaders who come from that community, they feel it even more than anyone else.
Governor, I have a question. I know the media is here to ask their questions, but the media have never done justice when it comes to police accountability. So I want to ask a question, and the question we asked earlier today, and that is, you can get upset with me, but you guys haven't done your job, so. But the reality is, Governor, is that many people in this state and across the world have converged on George Floyd's death and are hoping for this state to actually pass a meaningful police accountability. The bill that is right now the way it is includes a provision that would have made it if George Floyd fought back in any way and assaulted Derek Chauvin. George Floyd would be facing more time in prison than Derek Chauvin, who killed him for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. Our community has asked for us to bring real, meaningful change. You have said you're going to bring meaningful change. So we're asking you, if the legislators are not able to get the work done, you need to veto this bill, because we need real reformative change in this moment for our community.
Yeah, well, no, thanks, Jaylani. And I think what the Lieutenant Governor's talking about, this is the challenge of democracy. I think many of us feel disappointed. And I say that what we've been saying all along, disappointment's one thing, trauma is another, and being at the point of it, of trying to see what the legislature was able to get done. I think in this moment that I thought we would rise above this as legislators to be able to get some of that meaningful change, but I also recognize the whole spectrum of services that we deliver, from housing to all of the people that count on medical assistance, you name it, are at stake, and especially with state government. And so trying to reach a compromise, trying to use our executive authority to move more money into those communities, to change policies the best we can, is what I think the compromise we end up with. And I know that that's unacceptable to many communities, but it's the reality of a divided legislature, that this is where we're at, and we move it as far as we can. A veto on this, I don't believe, moves us any closer to where we're going to get to that point. In fact, I think there is all the potential that it moves us further away, because it polarizes us around these issues. And every piece of legislation is a challenge because of that very thing. So we will do the best that we can. I don't know if there'll be a bill on my desk to veto. I don't know what the final look of that bill will look like. There's opportunities for amendments to still continue to come forward. And then there's the work that we're trying to move through the executive branch. But this is a trying moment, and I don't think anybody thinks any of this is going away. The deep concerns that this community is expressing are real. They're not going to go away no matter what happens with this bill. They're not going to go away if we pass the bill, and even if we improve it, there's work that communities are going to have to do. So I see this as a much longer collaborative and transformational effort, but there are going to be a lot of people in this moment see this as not acceptable. I understand that, and that's where we stand today, and we'll see what comes out the next 24 hours. So thank you all.